So we asked for your questions, and we got one from Joan, who's been with us. Seems like has been with us for our whole journey at Hammers Chat. We love Joan to bits. I don't know the question myself. Geo says this is a tricky question. Geo, right?
Yeah, it is a tricky one from one of our favourites. She was the one that when we announced we were going like full time, and I said I was moving to England, she left a really, really nice message. I'll confess something here. For I print when I moved, I printed it off, and I've got
She said about her children leaving home. Is that's right?
it
Wasn't
was
it?
such a nice message that I actually printed off the comments she wrote,
Mm.
and I've got like a pin board with just stuff on it, and I put it up on there because it was quite like motivational. Anyway,
She's no. I mean, do you know what? She deserves it. She says it when I said I was going through my like my health checks and stuff like that, which I was my MOT. Yeah, she was the first person to message with loads and loads of advice. We love Joan to bits. So Joan's been with us a long time. Thank you, Joan.
Joan said, I have tried, but I can't be optimistic about Potter. He had a chance to experiment without fear, and he's failed abysmally. We have him for another season. Can you give me any positives to give me hope that we won't be relegation fodder? The first fixtures will be crucial. Getting rid of Creswell is madness. We need leaders, but perhaps half of a new team may want to do well for West Ham. What do you think?
Well, thank you, Joan. For the benefit of maybe people that are jumping on, maybe not watched these videos before, I am going to try and answer Joan's question, which is can I be positive? And I'm just saying that now because I am quite negative about it. I'm not overly hopeful.
Ironically, this is a video with an agenda.
I'm not overly enamoured with Potter, so far from my choice, and I've not been impressed by what I've seen. So it is tricky for me to pick out positives, but Joan has asked for positives. I'm not going to say anything more negative about it. I will really try. Okay. I think, Joan, when I'm worrying about relegation next season, there's a couple of things that make me think, okay, maybe that won't happen. I'll say a couple of things that generally called Jared Bowen and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. But aside from the fact that we do have some amazing players, so teams that struggle, maybe not Ipswich, you'd say, but teams that struggle tend not to have someone that can put the ball in the back of the net. We do. And I think it is a reasonably small step for Potter to identify what Bowen's best position is and to play him in it. I think perhaps I'm looking at it, he doesn't maybe fancy Fulkrug as much as we might have hoped. He definitely doesn't fancy Evan Ferguson. So I have to work on the assumption that whichever striker he brings in, he's going to like. If that happens, I think Bowen will play more in his best position. So I think you have that. I think the other thing is, whilst I don't like his style of football, he has improved the defence from a really bad starting point, which Lopetegui was probably the worst defence I've ever seen. And I do think if he gets his players, and it is a big if, I do believe we'll be able to control things better. And if I'm looking at maybe some of our more recent mistakes, Areola basically handing the ball to Morgan Gibbs-White, Max Kilman, an individual error, gifting Tottenham a goal, and there's more than that. I do believe you can probably cut that stuff out by having a full pre-season with players that are comfortable in those positions. You'd hope a goalkeeper, maybe. And I don't think he's absolutely useless. And I do think if he gets his players, I do think we'll be tight enough at the back and be able to nick enough goals that we possibly might not be, that we won't be relegated. I think we'll be okay. And I think whenever I've mentioned that we'll be okay, people have said, well, hold on, that's not good enough. I agree. But the bar I've set is very, very low, which is I've gone from thinking, oh, hold on a second, this guy could take us down next season, to me actually thinking, well, actually, I would probably take okay at the moment. And whilst it's not thrilling the way he wants to play, I do think if he gets his players, we'll grind out enough results. We'll be. You wouldn't particularly look forward to playing West Ham, and I think under Lopetegui, a lot of teams probably look forward to playing West Ham because they talk about get us. I think if he can instill that, then we can do something. And I've got something else positive I want to say about the transfers, about the transfer window, which I'll say in a bit, just to let Geo come in and give his positives.
Well, I'll park my transfer target type thing for a couple of minutes and focus on the pitch, really. And what I'm going to say, all the evidence goes against it. This is my opinion. You won't change it, but the statistics, the data, the facts go against it. And I think he's better than Lopetegui. I think Lopetegui, I used to dread looking like games coming up with West Ham with Lopetegui in charge. I was dreading them, and I was fearful of getting a battering. And we got quite a few under Lopetegui as well. Yeah. And not only that, I just had no hope. And now I wouldn't say Potter's necessarily giving me loads of it, but we're no longer getting battered. And I did. He winds me up when he says we're being competitive. We are competitive, because I think there's a big difference between being competitive and there being one goal in a game that actually you're not really. It's quite comfortable for the opposition, even though there's only one goal in it. I think we're that. I think we're only a goal behind, but we're not really threatening them too much. So I don't see that as competitive, but he does. And there's been elements of the games under Potter I have enjoyed. There's been 20, 30-minute periods where actually I thought we played some good football. The second half against Bournemouth in particular, I remember really enjoying that. The goal we scored against Manchester United was fantastic. Yeah. Now, the problem is it's only here and there, and I've just spoken about a half-hour period in a 90-minute game. But if we could get that over most of the game rather than less of it, it could improve. It should improve. I am fearful for next season, but a lot of it does hinge on the transfer window. And the one thing I will say is that I know there's a lot of talk about we're skint and stuff like that, but Sullivan tends to back his manager in their first window. Lopetegui had over 100 million. Pellegrini and Huselos got a lot of money to spend. Moyes didn't necessarily get the big window per se, but his first window, the second time round, he got Jared Bowen and Thomas Souček, in that January transfer window. So he will usually back them in that one window to give them a bit of a leg up. And I'm hoping he can do the same again with Graham Potter. And whilst I don't subscribe to once he gets his own players will be all right, I do think once he gets his own players, or if he gets his own players, will improve. I do agree with that. Whether that's enough, I don't know, because the reality is we've had 4 wins in 18. So technically, you could get 5 wins in 18 and we've improved. We need more than that. But I do look at the midfield in our team and think, well, how can we play the way Potter wants to play with those in midfield? I don't think we can. I think they're the biggest hindrance, really. And if he can really fix that problem in the summer transfer window, I think it would fix a lot of our problems at West Ham. There's a lot of if, buts, and maybes.
Yeah.
But that's what this is. Everything's hypothetical. If you think we're going to get relegated, that's also hypothetical. So sorry, Joe, and I appreciate we're not being overly positive, but we are scraping the barrel perhaps at this point.
It is tough, Joan, because he's given us nothing to get behind, really. And, I think Geo was alluding to about the midfield. I think everybody would agree with. I don't even feel like he's tried anything particularly different there. There have been times we thought, well, actually, this is so bad. Why aren't you playing Irving, and why aren't you maybe playing Orford? He did give Orford a chance, as we discussed in a video we just recorded 10 minutes ago. But I think the other thing, I think he's probably the first manager in a little while that is willing to change his tactics for the opposition. You felt for 2 different reasons. Moyes was a one-size-fits-all, and it didn't matter if you were playing Sheffield United at home or Manchester City away. We were going to play that way. I guess we didn't get too long to look at Lopetegui, but it appeared it was tough. I think it was tough with Lopetegui just because he said he'd been brought in and asked to play attacking football. That's doesn't get mentioned much anymore, but that was the one standout thing from his reign, which he was a defensive manager. We hired him and they said, we need you to get us playing on the front foot. It was just a weird thing to do, you know. Just wasn't the right man for the job. But from the limited time he was here, he didn't seem able to switch too much. Potter seems to be able to change between games. And in game, whether we'll press, whether we won't press, he's shown an ability to change tactics in game. So I think it's promising. That shows some promise. And I think he's shown the ability that he will drop players, and that's not all of them and not enough of them. But I think there is a ruthless streak there somewhere. I think, which is good to see. But it's hard. It's hard because I'm saying a lot of this stuff, Joan, without having too much belief. My feelings, all my instincts, all my feelings are, if I was going to speak passionately, it would be about why he's not going to work out. So I'm really having to, as Geo said, scrape the bottom of the barrel. The thing for the transfer window is that there's a part of me that maybe has been a little bit buoyed by some of the players that we've been linked with. And that is largely down, I've got to say, to ex-West Ham United employee, because I've been waiting on his updates, I've found, because they seem to be different players. They seem to be left of field players I've not necessarily heard of. But then when you scratch below the surface, and we're lucky enough, well, due to lovely people like yourself, Joan, to have Y Scout on our patrons, so we've got the sort of the global scouting software. When I go and look at some of the players that he mentions, you can see, well, actually he's producing some numbers. He might not be high profile. They might not have made the big jump up to the big leagues yet, but that would indicate that maybe we've got a slightly more scientific and cerebral approach to how we're going to bring players in. And he's showing a desire to bring the average age of the squad down. And I do think that if he can, this is the struggle. He's not shown any intent even this season to fix that broken midfield. But if he has highlighted it, and he is going to bring in players that bring in the type of players in midfield that we think he needs, then I do think we'll be able to control games. And I think that's what he's about. And if he gets that, then it'll be a little bit better. A couple of final words, Gio, before we wrap up.
He's shown he's ruthless with dropping some players, but also players that are maybe perhaps causing a bit of negativity, but one way or another behind the scenes. He's showing that he's happy to drop those players too. And I think the way that he's dealt with some of the players whose contracts are expiring too has also been ruthless. I think maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, if you take that West Ham and bring them forward to today, I think we might have renewed Soufal's contract. We might have renewed Fabianski or Creswell's contract. He hasn't. Now, there is a possibility that he tried to, and the player said, no, I'm off, thank you very much. But I feel like it was a club decision. We're not going to offer these players a new deal and off you go kind of thing. That's ruthless. That is ruthless. So if he's going to do it with Soufal and Creswell, why would he not do it with James Ward-Prowse and anyone else in the team? I think bar Jared Bowen, I think Wan-Bissaka, apart from those two, why would he not be ruthless with Emerson and Salmon in the summer? Because he's done it with players he's literally playing. So why would he not do it with players that he's considered to be on the bench, squad players? There's more evidence to say that he's willing to sell players that aren't up for it than there is to say he's going to hang on for them for too long. And actually, I think that's something West Ham have been guilty of in the past, hanging on for players too long. With these players that are contracts expiring and they're off, I think there's a bit of evidence that actually Potter's willing to get rid of them as soon as their time's up at West Ham. And for me, that's a positive.
There you go. There you go, Joan. Thank you very much indeed. Love you to bits. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you to everybody else. There'll be a few more of these doing the rounds over the next few days, certainly, because we're in that little fallow period when the season's ended before we can actually start getting these signings over the line. So, yeah, thanks to all our patrons that are putting questions. Joan, we will catch up with you very, very